Hey, what's up YouTube? I'm creating this video to talk about Santa Claus and Satan and the North Pole. And I find it interesting because Satan is a Nordic man, a Nordic male, white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. But I know in Mayan culture and all that, and I think some other cultures, not only do they talk about the serpent people and the ant people, which I think are symbolic of the Greys, but you also hear a lot of talk about Nordic looking aliens. And I do know the Mayans thought of one of their gods being Nordic, I think Quetzalcoatl. And when the Spanish came to South America, the Mayans actually, or I think it was the Aztecs, actually mistaked Cortez and the rest of these conquistadors, the Spanish as the old gods returning back to the Aztec people. And it's interesting because Satan and Santa have the same letters. And then you have Santa's home. His home is at where? At the North Pole. North Pole, Antarctica. That's supposedly where the entrance to Inner Earth is. And we hear so many ancient myths all around the world talk about these gods, these reptilian gods, and these Nordic gods, and these alien greys. They come from underground. Hopi myths talk about the serpent and ant people and how they created the first human being in a cave underground. And the Hopis actually believed that they're descendants of the serpent, and that and that's where they came from, was from underground, and they made their homes on the surface, and were taught civilization, how to live, by the ant people and by the serpent people. And I just find it pretty interesting that Inner Earth, we hear a lot of stuff about Inner Earth and a lot of these underground bases being homes to the Greys, to the Reptilians, and to the Nordics. So it kind of makes you wonder, Santa Claus being this big white guy, beard and all that, coming from the North Pole, from Inner Earth, and his helpers are little elves, could that be talking about the dwarves? Like, the god Bes, the ancient Egyptian god Bes, or the leprechauns. The dwarves have many different names around many different cultures. Even Lakota myths here in South Dakota, Native American mythology, they talk about the little people as well. So the little people are talked about all around the world. But so it's interesting. Santa's little helpers, the elves, the dwarves. And then you got Santa himself, a Nordic, Satan, Santa, coming from the North Pole, Inner Earth. So, I just thought I should bring this up. And they say that's where our slavers come from. I mean, these aliens, Inner Earth. Inner Earth, those that dwell in the Inner Earth, they control those who are up here on the surface. I also think they operate from different planets. I just think they have, they have bases of operations. And there's even rumors of cities being down there and underneath Antarctica and all that. And I think there's even a city rumored to be underneath. I know there's one rumored to be underneath the temple of Shiva. There's an ancient temple of Shiva carved into rock in India. And there's said to be a city underneath that temple itself, and also a city underneath the pyramids of Giza, the ancient Egyptian pyramids. But, so there's a lot of hidden shit, I think, though, in Antarctica, and they say that once upon a time ago, about 40,000 years ago, I think, before the Ice Age, that Antarctica actually used to be forest, and it never used to be ice and snow up there, but it used to be forest and all that, and actual land and green grass and shit. And it kind of makes you wonder, what kind of lost civilizations were there once upon a time ago, or even pyramids could be there. I know in a lot of Hollywood movies like Aliens versus Predator, pyramids are shown. There's one Aliens versus Predator movie where they actually show where actually take place in Antarctica, and there being actual pyramids there, and the pyramids are dedicated to these aliens and these predators. But there's another movie I was thinking of too. Oh yeah, there's a movie called Time Traveler, or you know, The Time Traveler, and it's a pretty old movie. I think it's a movie that was made in the 90s, late 90s, maybe the early 21st century, but I think it was like in 99, 98 or something like that. But it was called The Time Traveler, and it was this dude that built a time machine, and his time was back in like the early 1800s or the late 1800s, and he was living in England, and he was a genius. He was a he was a scientist. He was a genius, and he built a time machine, and he actually traveled in the future, and he traveled to the modern day world, and he was only here for about 5 minutes, and then he traveled further into the future, and then he saw that there was some great cataclysm, some great disaster that happened, and our moon was destroyed in the process, and then humanity lost their technological ways. Their society dwindled, you know, very steeply from that point on, and then humanity kind of broke into two factions. Some human beings, they went down underground into a cave system and lived there, and then other human beings, they lived on the surface, and these humans, the humans that went underground, they started evolving much differently than the humans that remained pretty much human, that lived on the surface, and these humans that lived underground, they started becoming brutish, started becoming like giants almost, but animal-like in a lot of ways, and they started actually they would actually hunt the surface dwellers and take them down to their cave system and eat them, and their leader was vastly different from them themselves. Their leader was a tall, white-skinned, you know, blonde-haired man, but he was like really pale, and he had like blonde white hair, and he looked like a Nordic alien, and he controlled that whole entire cave system, and the humans that evolved into these brutish monsters too, and he would and I think in some way he would also feed on the humans himself, but he controlled the whole surface dwellers and all that, and the whole surface people I found was interesting. They were all colored people, like they were blacks and browns. None of them were white people, which I also found kind of strange as well. But yeah, I mean, kind of makes you wonder about Inner Earth and Santa Claus and where these myths originate from and shit. And I just thought I should make a video about this because I found this pretty interesting. And I think not only do they operate from other planets, but they also operate from this planet, and they do have their underground bases and cities and shit like that. And yeah,